Welcome to African American Conservatives, the soul of the conservative movement. I'm your host, Marie Strader. Please go to acons.substack.com for our commentary, or for our podcast, you can go to anchor.fm/AACONS or brightnews.com. Today, we've got a little bit of a different show for you. As we enter the new year and wrap up this year, we're going to take a look back in the rear view and have some notable Black conservatives with us today to have a roundtable to discuss the year's top stories. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests. Our roundtable guests today are Craig DeLuz, Project 21 member, founder of the Uncommon Sense Media Group, and executive board member for the Frederick Douglass Foundation of California. Donna Jackson, Director of Membership for the Membership Development for the Project 21 Black Leadership Network. Dr. Nicole Johnson, Pediatric Critical Care Specialist and Assistant Professor of Pediatrics, and Colonel Anthony Saab, a 25-year military veteran and recipient of 2 bronze medals and 3 combat air medals. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Perhaps the most interesting story that emerged from 2022 was Elon Musk's procurement of Twitter, in large part because Musk, as CEO, was able to release documents about the relationship between social media and the FBI. What are some of your takeaways from the release of the Twitter files? We'll start with you, Craig.
Wow, there's so much to take away from this, but I think what's most important is how little most of the mainstream media and big tech are actually talking about it. And it's because they're trying to literally cover it up. What you have here is government colluded, and I feel very comfortable using the term colluded, with big tech and media in order to silence those who disagreed with their political narrative. And the fact that this is not the biggest story on every news outlet in the entire world is the biggest story in and of itself.
Well, this confirmed what everyone has always known. They've always known that big tech was working with the government. Not only that, they know that the mainstream media is working with the government, and they've been suppressing voices of minorities and the American people for decades. This is not something new. This is the same tactics that the FBI used during the civil rights movement. This is nothing new, and it's not going to stop just because the information has come out.
Nikki?
Oh, I agree with Craig and Donna. But I think that the huge story in this one is I'm thankful that Elon Musk had the courage to actually stand on his conviction and do what he said that he was going to do when he bought Twitter. But this definitely is a huge story of, I agree, collusion with not only with the government and social media, but other institutions along with the government and social media to silence dissenting voices. And the biggest word here that needs to be taken away from this is censorship. This is true government censorship that happened. We all knew it, but now we have the receipts to prove it. The question now is, what are the Republicans going to do about it? And I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to actually do anything that's going to be punitive with this information.
Good point. Tony, weigh in.
Yeah, look, I think Nikki made a good point about being courageous. Why can't our congressmen be this way? Why do we have a billionaire doing this? Elon Musk has his own reasons for doing this. I would just wish that he would release all of the information at one time so it can all be evaluated. Look, he's in this to make some money off of Twitter because he's certainly taken a hit in buying it. The other thing I'd like to add to this is, where's Facebook and where's Google? I can guarantee you there is much more corruption going on between those two platforms than Twitter, because they're a lot larger. And then the final thing I would say on this is the media. As all of our guests have already said, it's not being covered. So I don't really know how many Americans really know what's going on at this point. So we're going to have to see what the results of this release of information is going to bring as some goodness to pointing out some of the faults that's happening in our government.
What I find interesting about the whole thing is, for so long it's, oh, you QAnon people, oh, you extreme, right and conspiracy theorists. And sure enough, all of those things that we said were happening behind the scenes were absolutely true. So, to Nikki's point, it'll be interesting to see what's done with that information.
Marie, they say, you know the difference between news and conspiracy theory? About 6 months to a year.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Now, Congress has just approved an additional $45 billion in aid to Ukraine, bringing the total of U.S. aid to that nation to approximately $100 billion. Should we continue to send Ukraine billions, seemingly without accountability or end in sight? Or are the billions we are sending a pittance compared to the cost of allowing Russia to annex a major European country? Craig.
I'll say that the two are not mutually exclusive. I think it is important the role that we play when it comes to defending and being there for our allies is vitally important. And when you have a totalitarian government like that of Russia, like that of Putin, I guarantee you, folks like China are keeping an eye on exactly how we handle this. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that we just send money, resources, and equipment willy nilly with absolutely no accountability. And it's seemingly that we've had very little accountability in this case. So I once again, I believe we definitely need to look at what we're doing, and I think that Kevin McCarthy, once again, should he be speaker, has said that they're not going to get a blank check, and that's important because he's not just saying we're not going to send aid. He says we're not just going to send aid and have no accountability.
That's right. Donna?
It's interesting that we just sent another $45 billion to Ukraine. However, we've taken away about that much from historically Black colleges.
Yes.
In this country, we'll support a regime that was known for being the most corrupt in the world. Now, do I think that Russia is a good player in this situation? Absolutely not. But you can't ignore the fact that this was the most corrupt government in the world, and there's no accountability. How do we not know if a lot of this is a money laundering scheme for a lot of bad actors, including military contractors in this country? We know that during the PPP loans, a lot of money, a lot went to bad actors, and a lot of it was stolen. And I don't for a minute doubt that a lot of this money that is going over to Ukraine is never making it to the country.
Nikki?
Oh boy, lots to unpack here. I think this story has a lot covered up that we don't really know about yet. We're sending blank checks basically to Zelensky, and we know that Biden and Burisma deals with Hunter Biden, and weapons of bioterrorist weapons that are being made and sanctioned by the U.S. are there. We have no, like everybody else has said, no accountability for where this money is going. And we're just sending money, and nobody's really asking the questions about where the money is going and why it's being used. So that's point number one. Point number two is we're sending this money, and Americans at home are suffering.
Yes.
Mitch McConnell said, maybe McCarthy may not want to have blank checks sent to Ukraine, but Mitch McConnell just said this week when Zelensky was there that this was a primary issue for the Republican Party. No, it's not. It's not a primary issue and concern for the American people.
No.
Why is the U.S. covering 50% of what Ukraine's country is trying to do to use to protect themselves, and the rest of Europe is not helping out, and Americans are over here suffering?
That's absolutely right. Tony, weigh in.
I would say of all of the topics that are going on and that we're going to talk about today, this is the number two topic besides immigration that I'm most concerned with because I'm closest to it and know probably most about how decisions are made on providing munitions, stockage of weapon systems, and all of those types of things to our allies. Look, when this thing took place back in 1994 under the Budapest Memorandum, we said that we would go to Ukraine's aid if they were ever invaded by what country? Russia. Russia invaded. We did nothing. We did nothing under Obama. And now we're pouring money into this country when in fact we have every governor, almost every governor in our nation state right here in our country asking for aid for fentanyl. What is going on? We have no more representation from our congressmen or our senators on what is really happening with our money. I'm also most concerned about the fact that the systems that we're sending to them, these are not second-rate systems that we're sending. We're sending top of the line, very, very complex systems to them that we're losing our balance on. These systems cannot be built overnight. It's going to take us a number of years to get back up the stockage if we ever go into war. I'm very concerned about it.
One of the issues, DK and I had a conversation the other night on Facebook Live, and one of the things that we said was to Nikki's point, we've got people in this country who are not faring well under inflation, who are going to bed hungry every night. We have people born in this country who have served this country honorably, as our veterans have, who are not being cared for in the manner that they should be given their service to this country. And yet we found all this money to send to another country. Of course, I understand the geopolitical implications. However, as we said, you put your oxygen mask on yourself first so that then you can help others. And I feel like we haven't done that to the greatest extent possible before sending more aid. It'd be one thing if we hadn't sent any aid at all, but we already have. And so to the point about fentanyl on the border and our border states being absolutely swamped with the influx of illegal aliens, which we'll touch on in a little bit. This is such a salient point. Now, in June, the Supreme Court issued the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization decision that ruled that abortion was not a constitutional right, something we conservatives knew. In response, pro-abortion advocates, including our president, have sworn to make abortion national law, although the Democrats didn't win enough House seats to make that so in 2022. There's another election in just 2 years. How do we prevent the Dobbs decision from becoming just a temporary victory for the pro-life movement? Craig?
Well, I think that first of all, it starts with helping to develop an understanding of exactly what this decision means. It does not mean that abortion is illegal. In states that had laws that made it legal, it is still legal. And in states that want to have it legal, several of them have passed laws to make it legal. What it says is that it is not a constitutional right. I mean, the thing that is allowed to happen is now we can actually have a discussion about it. When does life begin scientifically, morally, based on spiritually? We can actually have that conversation in each state. And so that, what's really hurt the life movement is the very fact that they say, well, it's a constitutional right. There is no discussion. So the number one thing we need to be doing is having those discussions in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, and having those discussions and talking about when does life begin. And even if we don't know, even if we say we don't know, then shouldn't we ought to be erring on the side of protecting innocent life? The conversation is the most important thing for us to be having right now.
That's absolutely right. Donna?
You know what? So a lot of my background is in accounting and finance, and it's always cash is king. One of the things that the Black American community needs to realize is that abortion is an industry. It is an industry built on killing Black babies. We know that Planned Parenthood started as the Negro Project.
Yes.
It was a way to eliminate our race. You know that Planned Parenthood, in their last financial statement, made $1.3 billion, and they're on record to make more this year. That means that they made more money than 96% of Black businesses. 96% of Black businesses. Why? Targeting African Americans. When you have the majority of abortion clinics located in Black communities, despite the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we're a smaller percentage of the population, when they're now putting Black abortion clinics in minority schools, they're
Yes.
desensitized, introducing sexuality into the classroom to make it normal so that the kids would be so desensitized by the subject that they're willing to engage in the activity at an underage so they can kill more babies. They're very transparent in their
Yes.
websites and advertising the fact that donate money to kill Black and minority children. They're very transparent. It's been working. If you think about the number of Black people that have been killed since Planned Parenthood, we've had multiple Holocausts. Almost
Yes.
half of our population has been killed by abortion. That is the most violent place for a Black child in America, the mother's womb.
To your point, one of the things that I am concerned about, one of the statistics that I've heard is that in the Black community, we have had more Black babies aborted than the Black population in 1961. 18 million babies. And I think it's now 20 million, but the population in 1961 was 18 million. So that with all the woke discussions that we're having about, oh, everything is racist, no one is really talking about the inherent racism. To your point, Donna, that it was built on eugenics. So absolutely. And I'm sorry, it's Nikki's turn.
I want to just keep going with that. We also had Janet Yellen telling Senator Tim Scott, who was raised by a single mom, that
Yes.
abortion rights are helpful to Black women because
Hmm.
it is a for provides financial security for Black women. And the worst part about this is that this is what the Democrats think. This is how they've been selling this message, and I think that also that this was a message received by many young women who voted in the midterms, and I think is one of the reasons why. I know we'll get into this later that the Republicans lost the midterms because we did not have a message to counter this. So what we need to do is it's great that this is now back at the state level. I love that. I applaud that Roe, was reversed. But what I and Casey versus Planned Parenthood reversed. But what we need to do to strategize for the future is to, yes, focus on the reasons why we are boarding our children and tackle that ways that we can make families more financially secure so they are not making the decision to kill our babies. So we need to have answers and solutions that counter this democratic narrative. And I think that's something that Republicans need to capitalize on.
And to your point, one of the things that Stacey Abrams said was, "Oh,
Mm,
well,
hmm.
in these inflationary times, just abort your child because
Yep, yep.
they eat, and it takes gas to drive them here and there."
Yep. But we need
So
a
yeah,
counter message. We
yeah,
need a counter message. I
yes,
mean, granted, Black people aren't stupid. We're not going to necessarily, we're not going to necessarily believe what Stacey is saying and what Janet Yellen is saying. But that message does resonate with people who are struggling financially, right? And particularly right now in this country. And we don't have an answer for that.
that's
So
right.
if we're not promoting ways to help support families, young families, single mothers, as a Republican Party without using the government to do it, we're going to keep losing this battle.
That is correct, Tony.
Hey, I think Nikki hit it on the head, and I think it's been the biggest problem that the Republicans have had since we started post-Trump, should I say, messaging. I think he was an expert on messaging. The biggest problem I see with the Dobbs versus Jackson issue is that education is not happening in our race. And I say that because most people don't even know who Margaret Sanger is. Most people don't even know what she stood for or didn't stand for. And the Democrats are leveraging this thing in every election because our people are not educated. So one of the things that we do have to do is concentrate on our messaging. And also, we've got to also concentrate on the fact that it took 50 years for us to get to this point where we're now changing Roe v. Wade back and giving it back to the states. Well, the Democrats had 50 years to make it a constitutional effort. They never did that. No one pointed that out. So I think, messaging is a big issue. And until we start having controlled messaging across the whole platform of the Republican messaging system, we're not going to win elections.
That's right. Now, in July, the White House argued that we were not in a recession, despite 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline, partly because the employment numbers were solid. However, in mid-December, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics reported that the job estimate for that period were greatly exaggerated. Instead of adding 1,121,500 jobs to the economy added only 10,500 jobs. That is a big discrepancy there. In light of this, a little bit off. In light of this and other bits of information that we have on such things as inflation and debt, what sort of financial shape is the United States truly in, and how can we ascertain our financial condition being accurately reported?
Okay. First of all, I think it's important to understand that getting those numbers wrong and remembering at that time, they were also pushing the Inflation Reduction Act that we all know did absolutely nothing to reduce inflation. We all knew that we knew that the numbers were bogus. The media, though, in particularly those in the financial media, knew that those numbers were bogus, and yet they said absolutely nothing. Folks, it's important for us to understand that we have to be very careful about what media we're intaking, that we're not just listening to whatever folks are telling us. But in reality, we know how things are going. You go to the grocery store, you go to the gas pump, you know that your dollar is bringing less to you. You're watching the interest rates on your credit cards, on home loans going up. You watching economists, people who actually work in this industry, are telling you that we're probably 99.9% heading into a major recession. It's funny how they want to change definitions of what a recession is. Once we all of a sudden meet that definition during a Democrat presidency, now they want to change the definition. I think it's obvious that we're going to be in a challenging spot, and one of those things that is, watch how much our debt is running up. While we were talking earlier about Ukraine and spending money on the border and spending money on locals here, keep in mind we didn't find any money. We're printing money.
Yeah, we are.
So that is a high sign when you don't have enough money to fulfill your basic obligations, and yet you're going to borrow money to not just try or claim to take care of those, but to then take care of things that are not your primary responsibility. That is a key sign that your nation or your entity, organization, whatever it is heading towards a financial cliff.
Donna?
We've been in a recession. And you can just talk to your neighbors and find out that. You see the shelves in the stores that are empty. You see people who can't afford to put gas in their car. You just have to talk to anyone in your community, and you're in a recession. I think the worst thing is how the media covers this situation up. If this was a Trump era presidency, they would have admitted it months ago, a year ago. But the struggle that people are having at the gas pump, the struggle that there are families that make over $100,000 that are living paycheck to paycheck, that have food insecurities, that have shut off notices. The Energy Information Administration said that 1 in 4 families can't pay their electric bills. That number is double for African Americans. They are receiving shut off notices month to month. People are living in food insecurities, utility insecurities. We've been in a recession and it's going to get worse. They've been secretly laying off people for months. They've all announced it. Amazon, Google,
Yes.
all of the companies, Targets, everyone has been laying off people for months now that nobody's paying attention to. Targets didn't make their numbers. Walmart's didn't hit their numbers. The companies are hemorrhaging money, but they so afraid of this administration that they won't admit it out loud.
That's right. Nikki.
Once again, I want to have to throw this back to Republicans. Again, I mean, we know that the Democrats are lying to us. I mean, come on, 1.1 million jobs off of the actual number reporting. We know, come on, that should be a big news story, absolutely. But what are Republicans gonna do to message their way out of this, to find solutions for the American people? This was a key failure and midterm loss to me, that they were not able to capitalize on the fact that we were in a recession. Inflation is through the roof. I'm having near strokes every time I look at my monthly budget and I look at how much we've been spending on food and gas. And fuel, and heating and everything in the house. But there was no message. Why do we not have solutions? We are conservatives. We have the best ideas. But I don't remember hearing that in anybody's messaging in the midterms. I mean, locally at the national level, it was all pointing to the Democrats and relying on people's historical thinking that the people were going to vote with their wallets. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen by far. I mean, we won some seats in the House, but by far we should have won a lot more, and we should have taken the Senate too. But I think that's clearly, a huge issue that we did not capitalize on solutions for getting us out of this recession.
That's absolutely right. And Tony, our mutual friend, Alan West, he and I have talked about this and we said, a week or so before the midterms, why didn't we see Republicans in front of the supermarket saying, look, Thanksgiving is coming up. Here's what it's cost in normal years. And here's what a Thanksgiving meal is going to cost this year. You're right, Nikki. The messaging just wasn't there. And to hear our president say that our military should apply for food stamps to get them through this was just the final insult as far as I was concerned. Tony, what are your thoughts on this question?
I couldn't say it better than Nikki did. I'll only say this. This is one of the reasons why I ran for Orange County mayor in Florida, because of inflation. There was no doubt in my mind that people would be outraged at what was happening to their wallet, what was happening to their 401ks, what was happening to the crime situation, and everything else that the Democrats were running in our county. But because the Democrats outspent me, they outmessaged me, because I didn't get that support that I really needed from the local Republican Party, I lost. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but what I am saying is this: I always say this, you get the government you vote for. You get it.
That's right.
I get it, because I wasn't successful in my messaging in getting us to where we needed to be. But to an even greater point, the press is continuing to back the Democrats. So we must have a strong messaging strategy when we go forward, because they are never going to give us the platform and coverage that we need to get our message out. So we got to be creative in doing it.
One thing I want to add, I know that we want the Republican Party. I mean, I'm not, our group is not a partisan group, but I know we're looking for the Republican leadership to come out with messaging. We have to stop, because it's going to take people like us that
Yes.
are out there getting the message, building coalitions together, so that people can see that it's not the individuals, it's not the party, but it's our policies that work. But we're going to have to be in the forefront of that, because there are a lot, and unfortunately, there are a lot of conservatives, Republican candidates that like big spending, but they want to blame it on the Democrats. But
Mm-hmm.
they want those big spending packages. They
Mm-hmm.
want, they want they want to lose graciously so that they don't have to legislate. And if we have any, if we're going to have see any breakthrough in saving people who look like us,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to be the ones to step in the forefront, not looking for them to support us, not looking for them to be the leaders. We're going to have to step into that shoe, because if you don't think that people on the Hill that has an R or a C by their names don't like sending $40 million to Ukraine, $40 billion to Ukraine, you're fooling yourself.
That's right.
They vote for pork. So we're going to have to take the mantle. We know the policies work. We're going to have to be in the forefront. And
I
Craig,
agree
did
with
you have
you.
something?
Yeah, one of the things that's important to note is, and I blame in being from California, it's probably one of the places where it's most evident. I blame the consultant class. We
yes,
have a class
Yes.
of
Yeah.
people who are running these campaigns who
yes,
are used to messaging
Yep.
to the Republican base and have never really had success in messaging beyond our base, because that would mean that they would either have to take the time to get to know our community, get to know places or people that generally have not traditionally supported the Republican Party, or they're going to have to share a piece of the pie and hire people and bring people in and partner with those who do, neither of which they are particularly interested in doing.
Yes,
Now,
you're
what I
That's
indeed.
right.
will tell you where we have seen success is there is a new class of consultants that are coming along. They're young, they're working on school board races, city council
Yes.
races, county board of supervisors, state legislative races, who've developed an understanding and a success in these areas, learning how to micro target and micro message, learning how to take the features of the Republican Party and identify how that benefits various different constituencies. That's the sort of effort that we need to start doing, that we need to be working in,
yeah,
because in the end, it's all about what have you done for me or what are you going to do for me. And it's one thing to talk about liberty and freedom and free enterprise, but in the end, the voter wants to know, how does that help me, help my family, help my community?
That's right.
that's right.
Now, you mentioned, Craig, that you're from California. That's my former home state.
Mhm.
Governor Newsom is considering a reparations bill that could mean as much as $223,000 for each Black California residents. What are your thoughts on
Well, I have more than a few thoughts on Governor Gavin Mussolini. Um,
that?
okay, first of all, you have a state that did not have slavery, that didn't have slaves, require people who didn't own slaves to give money to people who were never slaves. It makes absolutely, positively no sense, and it is nothing more than an attempt to buy a constituency. Now, the interesting thing is this is something that legally will never hold water. It will never fly. So he gets the big PR bounce, which Gavin Newsom is very, very good at. He's very good at the big PR, very good at getting PR without actually doing anything.
Mhm.
I think is idiotic, in particular in a state that's about to face a $25 billion deficit, right? Anyway. So those are that's the primary issue that I think that we're dealing with, is the fact that this is nothing more than a PR stunt. It is not going to go anywhere. And what I'm hoping is that Black voters in California, when it doesn't go anywhere, I'm hoping that they recognize just how fake and fraudulent the Democratic Party here in the state of California is. Because I mean, they've run pretty much everything almost my entire adult life here in the state of California. Yet the plight of African Americans in this state has never gotten any better. Our communities haven't gotten any better. Quality of education hasn't
Schools.
gotten any
Yep.
better. None of that has improved. And I'm hoping that this promise, in particular, because it's specifically to Black Americans, Black Californians, I'm hoping that they get that it doesn't work. Now, in the event that it does, in the event that they are able to approve it, I'll call it now. You're going to see a whole lot of people identifying as Black Californians who are neither Black nor Californians who are going to get in line for their checks. Let me just say that.
Well, you know what's interesting about it, Craig, is that California has been broke for over a decade now. And in fact, it's hemorrhaging people. I think it's like 163,000 have left during the pandemic. They lost 2 House seats. So in their state Senate. So, I mean, or state house. I can't remember. I think it was 2 House seats. So they're hemorrhaging people where, like you said in an earlier question, they're printing money. They're going to have to. Because there is no money.
Well, the state of California, the state of California relies heavily on corporations and high income earners for their taxes. So while there was that tech boom during COVID, California was just raking in the money. The average taxpayer doesn't pay much in the way of income taxes in the state of California. Well, California has gone so crazy with their regulations and their taxes and their wokeism that you're seeing businesses leave by the hundreds. You're seeing let me say businesses, employers leaving by the hundreds. You're seeing the wealthy, the investor class leaving by the thousands.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to see the stock market is coming back, investment income is coming back, and so now the goose that laid the golden egg, they're going to strangle it to death. And we now have a multi-hundred million. I mean, it's like $200 billion budget in the state of California. We're going to start to see all of these things, all of these excesses are going to start to have to go away. And it's going to be an example it's going to be an example to the rest of the country as to what happens when you let the left control your entire state government.
That's right. Donna?
So, this is Gavin Newsom's giving his bid for president.
Yes.
That's what this is all about. But it's interesting that in a state where African Americans have the lowest home ownership rates,
yes,
have the most segregated communities,
yes,
they're using the Green New Deal. I don't call it the Green New Deal. I call it the new green Jim Crow, because what it's done is created a situation of unaffordability where minorities are worse than they were during segregation. They have lower incomes. Their businesses are being driven out because of all of these Green New Deal policies. So they're giving people less than what they would need as a down payment for a home. Less. They're proposing less than what they would need for a down payment for a home. They purposely created homelessness by all of these climate change policies that allows multiple lawsuits against one industry. And then they do the equivalent of throwing a water bottle at a forest fire.
Yes.
$133 per Black person. I mean, this is craziness. I mean, the best thing that a Black American can do in California is go to Texas.
That's what I did. That's what I did 2 years ago.
Craziness. But liberals and the left using Black people to launch their career when they're actually purposely making Black people worse off.
That is absolutely right.
That is the truth of the matter is. So, they're never going to see the money. That's why they propose the money, because they know they're never going to pay it.
That's right.
The fact is that we need to squash this narrative and let's say, wait a minute, your communities are the most segregated. Your literacy rate for African American males, because we know they targeted African American males in California, is the worst. Your incarceration rates are the highest. And so the fact that they would sit here and, demean us demean African Americans with this reparations is crazy.
Nikki?
Okay, I got a little bit of a different twist on that. Donna, you hit some salient points. To me, this is really key. Progressive policies are the policies that have destroyed Black Americans, period. Progressive
Mhm.
policies have have caused all of this despair and kept our wealth gap higher than
Exactly.
any conservative policies or capitalist policies ever in the history of this country. So to that, what they are trying to do is basically say, hey, yes, this country owes you. We need to repair
Mhm.
that, and we're trying to put a band-aid on it, and let's give you some money to help you fix it. But what they are not doing is pointing to the fact that it's their policies that
Exactly.
made all of
That's
this stuff
right.
a problem in the first place.
Yes.
And what Republicans' response is really, really, this is probably one of the topics that infuriates me the most here that we're going to discuss today, is because our first instinct is to talk about um, slavery and how the people living today don't owe anybody here anything. California wasn't a slave state, blah, blah, blah. But what we're doing is ignoring the fact that it is their Democrat and progressive policies that have continued to cause major problems for Black people in this entire country, from the time of slavery through Jim Crow and Black laws to current redlining, you name it, eugenics, we just talked about with abortion. All of those are Democratic leftist policies that have left us behind in this country. What we need to do, instead of saying writing off reparations, is we need to counter that message with a discussion about why reparations are necessary and then how we propose to repair what this country has done to Black Americans. It doesn't need to be financial. It doesn't need to be through our tax money. We need to come up with solutions that are going to fix all of these problems that were caused by Democrats. And we need to point the finger at them and show it to people, just like Tony said earlier. We need to educate Black people and let them know that this is the reason why they are in the state. We are in the state that we are in this country is because of progressivism.
Yep.
Yeah, I think everybody made some great points on
Mhm.
this subject matter. There was no way I thought that Gavin Newsom was going to survive the recall. When he lost to a guy like Larry Elder, who is probably one of the most articulate, knowledgeable black man in California, I knew at that point, if Larry Elder can't beat this guy in a recall, there's something wrong, just based on the state of California, where it was going. And it is no surprise to me that now Gavin Newsom is talking about reparations and getting the coverage that he's getting as a result of it. The media right now in the state of California is equal to the media all across our country. They say that wherever California goes, so the states shall follow. And I never believed that to be true. But what I'm finding is that, wow, a lot of these states are turning towards those same ideologies that California has.
Yep.
And that is only as a result of media coverage being slanted and the fact that our Republican Party, and I know how you feel about this, Adana, but I'm say it again because I ran with these people. The Republican Party they must change. If they do not change, people like me will not be able to get in there. I spent a lot of my own personal money to do that. And trying to get the coverage that I need, you must have that back and you got to have the money because we got to play this by their game. There's no other way to do it. We're going to continue to lose elections unless we do. We're going to have to do it their way. Thank you.
All right, Tony, I'm gonna piggyback on that a little bit. I agree with you that we need the support from the National Party, no matter what our message is. We do. There are some good people who are running in local races throughout the country, or even national races throughout the country. They do need the support and the financial backing. But that's not what happened with Larry Elder and Gavin
Oh,
Newsom.
no,
I'm
I know.
sorry. I'm gonna have to disagree with you that this man has name recognition. Larry
Right.
Elder. He had the money and he had support from people within the party, not necessarily the full national party. We can argue about that. But what I think Larry Elder did wrong, and I have a lot of bones to pick with Larry Elder. We can talk about that another time. But what I think he did wrong here is he went in and took changed the message from what the grassroots organizations in California that built up this recall, and put it on the ballot in the first place. He took their message away and made it about him. He made it national when that belonged to the people of California. They could have won that race. They could have beat Gavin Newsom. But Larry Elder came in and made it a national race, made it about him. And that was when the media coverage made it huge. And big name Democrats started going to California to win and defeat. That didn't happen until he entered that race. So
Can I come back on one thing? Can I ask a question on that? Because I'm not a California resident. But don't you think that there is so much election impropriety going on in that state that it is almost impossible for a person to win on a conservative ticket?
Not with a real conservative message. I don't think so. If you have a
I'll-
real conservative message, just like Maurice said, there were some Senate or House seats that were just won. These are local area races. If you have a message that's conservative and that is reaching the people who are on the ground and directly addressing their issues,
Well, no, I think they won by mail-in ballots. They won by mail-in ballots. Something the Republican Party doesn't do.
But that's a whole other problem. I think we'll discuss.
Well,
that is another
discussion. That's something
I'm going to get us to move on a little bit. But to answer that, I will say one thing. And that is to an earlier point, reparations for something that happened so long ago. I think somebody brought up the whole issue of the HBCUs, all the money that President Trump gave to HBCUs. If we want to talk about, we need to have a seat at the table. So to have more judges, to have more people in the criminal justice system that are correctional officers, that are, all throughout levels of the justice system, to be able to go to an HBCU, to put that money in an HBCU or something like that, or scholarships or those sorts of things, that I agree with. I don't have a problem with that, because to address Nikki's point, that does level the playing field a little bit, and that does address some of the issues. But just this willy-nilly anybody, we've talked so much about the science, about when life begins. They talk about follow the science and address the science, but we've got people saying that, well, I identify as a woman, or, there are more than two sexes, ignoring the science, we've got all of these issues, and we need to really address what is factual. And so, you're going to have all these people, to Craig's point, identifying as Black. At this point, we've got so many people who really are interracial. We are a melting pot. So I think that is the strategy that I would have pursued. But we do have a time limit, so I'm going to move us on, if you don't mind. So here we are. The Biden administration announced that nearly 235,000 illegal immigrants were apprehended in November alone, along with a 50% increase in heroin and fentanyl seizures over October. When Title 42 expires, the number of border crossings is expected to increase dramatically from even this number. How much more of this influx can we sustain, and what can we do to staunch it? And I'm going to actually go in reverse order this time, just to break it up a little bit and give everybody a chance to have their points first. So, Tony?
I think, as I've said, this is my number one issue, and I think that our nation is asleep at the switch. There is no telling how many right now sleeper cells we have in this country, coming from all over the world. I am convinced that these situations that are happening with our power grid may be as a result of that. They are expecting 19 million people to come into this country. 19,000 people every day. Every day. 7,000 are coming in right now. 19,000 every day after Title 42. And Title 42 simply states that if you have COVID, you have to stay in Mexico because, if any person coming in, if we suspect them with COVID, they have to stay in Mexico. That's it. But we don't need Title 42 if we just follow our own immigration laws. So we've gotten to a point now in this country where I understand why they're doing this. Everybody here probably does. They're doing it because they think these are prospective voters. These people are going to be granted citizenship. But I'm also convinced that at this moment, this is this is what keeps me up at night. This is what makes me afraid as a retired soldier that we have already put ourselves in grave danger for another 9/11.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Nikki.
Yeah, our homeland is at risk, absolutely, from all fronts: health, financial, domestic security. We are gravely at risk, but we are also promoting, um, gosh, this human trafficking and horrible
Yes.
human rights abuses that are happening
Yes.
with all the transport of these illegal immigrants, through our country. But this is 100% preventable. All of this is. If we just shut the doors for a predefined period of time, codify some legislation about immigration, and clarify what the Constitution says, birthright, citizenship, all of it. And I want to point out before my last point, we had the House, the presidency, and the Senate, and we chose not to do it. So
That's right.
Are they going to do it? What are they going to do? I don't know where our hope lies here. I'm actually not only afraid, but I really am not hopeful that this is going to get fixed in our lifetime.
That's right. Donna.
Well, you know what? Illegal immigration is a Black issue.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
What happens is, when they flood the market with illegal immigrants, then it replaces minority Black workers. It increases the incarceration rates on Black males. It increases the unemployment rate on Black males. It takes away from affordable housing from African American communities.
And why don't we discuss this, Donna? Why don't we message this?
My group, I'm going to tell you the truth. My group is always messaging this.
Yes.
We're getting on every
We do too.
And we're trying to put out commentaries. We're going to groups and we're trying to build coalitions from other conservative groups to get this messaging out. I'm on the beat all the time saying, listen, it is no longer that you can have this policy group and this policy group doing what they have their thing and we have our thing. No, as a group, we're going to have to get together and defeat this, because you had 30 progressive groups that wrote a letter to all the corporations that were on Twitter, and Twitter, after Elon Musk bought it, and they were losing $4 million a day in revenues. We have more than that many groups, conservative groups, that don't get together and do the same thing. We have to fight in numbers, and we have to let all of our people, if they don't give us a platform, we need to be reaching in conferences, we need to get in communities, and that's what I encourage all of our members to do. We're putting out publications, we're doing all of that so we can get that messaging through. Do you know that the people that call me the most are like former Black teachers, that people in this country don't even know that the teachers union, the largest teachers union, reduced the number of Black teachers in this country from 40% to 4%. These are not right-wing conservatives that are doing this. These are left-wing individuals that won't even let this information get out on the TV screen. We need to be filing lawsuits. We need to do all of these things fighting together. And that's what we're trying. I get teachers unions, former Urban League presidents, NAAC presidents. I get people that are calling me asking me for my help because even on the left, blacks are being censored.
Yes.
And they don't know how to fight because they are not allowed to fight. They have to go through re-education and they have to be reminded that they're black and they can do whatever they want to. And so that's the thing that I'm always trying to stress. We have to be on the forefront and we have to get lawyers. We got lawyers. We get lawyers. We have to file lawsuits. We have to fight against this because the policies, like uh, like you said, the policies are destroying our communities. They're flooding this country with illegal immigrants to replace the black people that have embraced all the policies that they told them they should, like abortion, like
Yes.
single parenthood, like this gender all of a sudden that we're not going to be be reproducing. And that is the biggest problem that
Yes.
we're facing today. And so, all of a sudden you got a new broad of, demographic that you can have permanently dependent on our government resources and who are guaranteed voters. That's what illegal
That's right.
immigration is about.
Craig?
Earlier one of the other guests said that we don't know if we're going to be able to solve this in our lifetime. The truth is that not too long ago we had a solution. During the Trump administration, illegal immigration cratered like to like
Yes.
85% of what it was under the Obama years, and it was really simple. It was a policy that said if you violate our immigration laws, you will pay a consequence. You are not allowed to just walk across our southern border. The idea of building the wall is less about the actual building of the wall than sending a message that our laws, our borders
Yeah.
matter. What we have right now is we have an administration that says that at once was saying, "Come, you're welcome," and now that all everybody's coming, now they're doing almost the same thing, except they're saying, "We don't want you to come.
Yes, we do.
We don't want you to come. If you
Yeah.
come, we don't know what we're going to do. So just come here." And oh, by the way, when you get here, we're gonna give you a place to live. We're gonna give you food. We're gonna give you a job. We're gonna give you free education. You cannot. I'll put it to you this way, and if anybody who's ever lived in a neighborhood where you have stray animals, for example, right? If you keep putting out food, you're going to get strays that are going to come. And I'm not comparing these folks to strays, and I totally understand why they are coming here. But if you keep providing the incentive for them to come into this country illegally, they're going to continue to do it. My in-laws immigrated here. They did so legally. They went through the legal process.
Yes.
What is it that we say to them who took the time, who
Yeah.
filled out the paperwork, who put up the money,
Yeah.
The
who did
money.
everything
Yeah.
right, who came here, didn't get on government assistance or government dependence, and built something out of nothing? What do you say to them when you reward people for cutting in front of the line?
Well,
Yeah.
and you
Well,
try to
I'm,
go to
let me
Canada,
pick,
you try to
let
go
me
to
answer that.
Mexico
Oh yeah.
and see, you can't walk
Yep.
across the border to any of our neighboring countries. And, to your point, Craig, I have to disagree with you on one thing. You can put out the food for the strays as long as it's not in Hyannisport and as long as it's not in Martha's Vineyard. Nikki, what were you going to say?
Well, I'm just going to say yes. I just want to clarify my point. I do believe we have the solutions. We just haven't. We're not going to be able be codifying them into laws that
Oh, we lack
solidify
the
our
will.
immigration policies. That's a problem. We can make executive orders until the cows come home, and then when the next administration gets in, we're going to see exactly
Yeah.
what we're seeing
It's,
right now.
it's
Well, if we
amazing.
just enforce the laws that we have right
I want
now,
to,
Yeah,
It's
but
to your point earlier,
our laws are very
right.
loose.
But we're supporting Ukraine's border.
Oh
We're
yes,
Yes.
supporting
you are.
Ukraine's border
Yes.
and protection
Mhm.
for their
Yes.
border, but ours is open. And if you say
No.
something, you're
Yeah.
racist.
Yep.
I'm
Yes.
like, okay, well, I don't care what I
Yep.
am, but I'm still right. And we need to make sure that
Yes.
Right.
we get rid of
Okay.
black
That's right.
workers and people who fought so hard for citizenship. We fought so hard to be recognized as human beings in this
Yes.
country. And now we have a whole broad population coming to this country that didn't work for it and they get it. How?
Yep.
Yeah,
What are you saying to African Americans?
And progressives are telling
that's
them that
right.
this is their country too.
Their
We don't have
country.
any
They,
borders, that we're usurpers.
yeah.
Oh
So,
my God.
but for black people, we just, I don't know what we are.
We have the
We're
wrong
just over here.
leadership that's talking for us. We have
We
the
are an
wrong
inconvenient
people in
truth in their
leadership
eyes.
Yeah.
speaking
Oh,
on our behalf. That is the problem. It's individuals like us that has to get up there and say, you know, these people don't speak for us because we don't believe that. We want our families to be strong, our communities to be safe. We want good paying gateway, blue collar gateway jobs. We don't want you to price us out of the marketplace. We want to live in your neighborhood.
Yes. And we don't want your crack pipe, your free crack pipes, or your clean
Exactly.
syringes.
Yeah. And
We just don't want the fentanyl and the crack. Can you
yes,
stop doing that?
exactly.
yes.
Hey, Maria, I wanted to make
Now,
one thing, point out one thing too on this. The media didn't cover this for years. Years. These people have been pouring across that border for years,
Right.
and they never covered it. So it's not that the American, I got friends and you guys have friends. They're
Right.
looking at CNN. They're looking at MSNBC. They don't want to go to Fox News because they like what they're hearing on CNN.
Exactly.
But CNN and all of these medias, these call themselves what they call them, mainstream. They're not mainstream.
no,
All they are puppets for the socialism and the Democratic Party. So they're not covering it. So Americans don't even know it.
They're propaganda for the
that's right.
proletariat.
That's
Yep.
That's right.
exactly.
Now, a phrase that few remember hearing before 2022 is all ages drag show. Why has the trans agenda suddenly become a prominent part of our culture, especially in the areas of education and entertainment where children are involved? I'm going to start with Tony.
I think it has always been there. And I'm not saying in the public eye, but I think things like this have always been there. And I think what we did, we being Americans, turned our back on our education system. And when we
Yes.
did that, I, for one, I mean, I spent my 25 years in the military. My kids went to public school, but I never really focused that much on that. My wife did to some degree, but I think as we looked the other way, they were taking out all of the conservatism in our education system, and they've been doing that since Woodrow Wilson. So I think it's always been there, and I think right now they're throwing that long pass, and they're trying to get all of this stuff put
Yes.
into the mainstream of our children. We're in danger.
That's absolutely right. Nikki?
Yeah, I agree. I think this has been progressively happening for many, many years, and it has been happening on just right under our noses. Me being working in an academic institution, I have seen the progression of it over time. And if you haven't read Abigail Schreier's book Irreversible Damage,
Yes.
please do. It is one of the most important books to me of our lifetime to protect our girls. And this hits home to me particularly because I have young daughters. I have a preteen and a teen, and they are in school, and including a private school, where this ideology has
Yes.
infiltrated. It is everywhere. It is not only in schools. It is in our media. It is, come on, it's Disney. Right? The
Yes.
video files that we've seen from Disney, where we know that it's right in their agenda to transform the thought process of our young children. They want them to find faults in their bodies and being women, being young women, being young men, being masculine men. All of this stuff comes together. They want them to take away their own self-love and be hurting. I don't know what it is. This is some evil that has infiltrated in our society, and we have to find a way to combat this. And we have to do it through family, through spirituality. We have to take over. But on a positive note, I do love the organizations like Moms for Liberty that
Yes.
went in
Yes.
started the grassroots campaigns to try and get parents like us with
Yes.
conservative solutions onto school boards. They had some wins in
Yes.
midterms, and that's something that we don't really talk about. That and it goes back to what Donna's been saying a bunch. We have to, at the grassroots level, take on some of these responsibilities. But we are a republic, so it happens at home first. And if we can take
That's
over
right.
school boards, our councils, we can reverse some of this. So I think there's some
That's
hope there.
right. Donna?
You know, it's a sad thing that you have 1% of the population, the one
Yes.
percenters, affecting the entire country
Yes.
because they are the loudest. The
Mhm.
people who make up the majority who are against these types of policies are too afraid to be very vocal. I mean,
That's right.
on a aggressive level, what they're doing, there's a lot of laws built around what minors can engage in. You know,
Mhm.
minors can't sign a contract because they lack the maturity. They can't. You can't sit down there and coerce a confession out of a minor without their parents. So there's a lot of laws built around what minors can engage in, and yet we're using a legal concept that was taught. CRT, critical race, is a legal battle, right? And we're teaching that to kids that lack the maturity that we already know that. So we need to be figuring out new creative ways to file lawsuits to stop what we're seeing right now, because there's a 1% of the population that's destroying all the rest of us. There's and the problem is, here's the real problem, because I always think it's follow the money. The medical profession has realized that this is a
Yep.
big money,
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
because
Yep.
instead
Yep.
Yes.
of me sitting down and seeing a regular physical, now you got therapies, you got physical, the psychological, mental, it's mental, the mental thing, you got surgeries, you got all this, and they realize that this is a great financial windfall.
Yes.
You got the legal profession who realize that they can sit down there and file all kinds of lawsuits against the people who are opposing this. And so this is a big financial windfall. We need to be going after those professions that see
That's right.
this as a money-making scheme. And that's what it is. It's a money-making scheme. Go after them, because they're the ones that are pushing this agenda, because they see the financial windfall out of it. And they don't mind that they're using minor children to do it. And so
And
if I can sit down there, I mean, you got prestigious institutes, you got
yes.
medical professions coming out of this. And this is huge. This is huge for them. And it's
Yeah,
all,
Donna.
I don't think it's all about the money. It's all about the money.
Yeah, I think that some of these kids who are coming out who have detransitioned and who have grown up into adults and
Yes.
are now recognize this
Yeah.
are actually pushing back. And there was an interview I think it was on Tucker. A young lady who was
Yes.
interviewed. She's
Yeah.
suing her
Yes.
mental health professional for pushing
Yes.
this ideology when there's no scientific basis for it. And I think that's kind of where it's going to have to start, because it is so pervasive right now.
And I agree. To Donna's point, the fact that we don't let children drive, they can't drink, they can't vote, they can't get married. And yet, here's the thing, when you talk about that, Nikki, about the psychologists and the American Psychiatric Association, gender dysphoria is still the DSM-5 as far as I am aware. And the fact of the matter is, we know for a fact that children developmentally
Right.
cannot distinguish fantasy from reality until they're about 7 years old. And there are kids that are transitioning much younger than that because of their parents. And they don't even know fact from reality. They still believe in Santa Claus. Sorry if there are any kids watching this. Shouldn't be watching it, but if you are, if I spoiled
Don't
anything.
believe you
But,
won't
they...
receive.
You know, that it's the thing. You know, the kids can't distinguish fantasy from reality. That's why you hear about kids jumping off of buildings because they think they can fly. You hear little kids that don't understand that their pet can't come back to life once it dies, because they don't understand the permanence of certain things. And yet you have a medical branch that is affirming some of this garbage. And so that to me is the most startling fact.
Yep.
And the
It-
duress
But I'm
that they're
sorry,
under, the
Craig,
duress that they're under, the undue influence
it's your
of the
turn.
teaching
And then,
profession that is coercing these people into this. I mean, this is
and
crazy.
if I can chime in real quick, I think first of all, it's important to understand that whether it's the trans theory, queer theory, critical race theory, the modern feminism, it's important to understand the root of all of these theories. They all come from social justice theory, which finds
Yeah.
its roots in postmodernism, which finds its roots in communist Marxism.
Mhm.
And I learned this as a school board member, because as they started to try and want to talk about these sorts of things in our school district, you know, I said, you know what, let me come to understand this stuff a little better. So I read the books, the foundational books of critical race theory. I read about critical theory and social justice. And here's the thing, folks, is when you understand that the progressives, and I like someone talked about this earlier, the progressivism that took place in the early 1900s, all once it failed, once it was revealed that the Soviet Union was an utter failure when it came to taking care of its people, all of those American progressives all went into academia. They all went into Columbia School of Education, Harvard School of
Yes.
Education,
Yep.
Yale,
Yep.
Stanford, Princeton, and then they
The
were
arts,
reinfused
theater.
right into the arts. They were further infused, and when the 1960s radicals, you know, the Weather Underground, when their leadership and all of those folks, once again, all went into those same institutions. They began educating the educators. They started educating the filmmakers, the people, the lawyers, the people who would influence our society. So now what was a academic theory, which never ever was ever put to any real substantive, logical, critical thinking sort of academic rigor, is now been pushed into people who are in media, who are in the legal profession, who are in education, all areas that influence our society, and when it comes to education, most importantly, influence our children. If we are ever going to turn this back, number one, we need to get people to wake up. Number two, we need to start to take those institutions back. We need to start being
Absolutely.
involved, not just in the school
Amen.
boards,
Mhm.
but in the schools that are educating the educators.
Educators. Craig, that is so,
That's right.
so
That's
right.
right.
And it goes back to Donna's point about how it's infiltrated the medical profession. It's the same thing with the scientists
Yeah.
as well. And so it is in medical schools. I can tell you, I sat in a meeting 2 years ago
Yep.
in my Ohio State Medical Association. It was our House of Delegates meeting, and I was a delegate for my district. And there was a resolution put on the table from medical students to start teaching sex education in preschool. Do you know that that resolution passed through the House
Yeah.
Delegates? There were only a few dissenting voices, mine included, and that for me, we are
Uh,
not running those institutions. We
uh,
need to be.
America's best and brightest are being educated into imbecility.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
right. That's right.
Yes.
Now, our
To
last
further point
question.
out his point real quick, the last institution that it took was the Department of Defense. They're teaching this to our
Mm.
soldiers, our airmen, and our
Yes.
Marines.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the church too.
It's everywhere.
in
It's
the church too.
everywhere.
It's in the church.
Yes. Now, what story do you think has been underreported but very important? Tony.
China, COVID-19 coming back, making its resurgence. Us not putting a testing requirement on immigration coming from China. They are right now sending Chinese residents to all over the world. It's getting ready to happen again. They opened up, well, first of all, they shut people down in China all over the place. I'm sure all of you know this. these big, huge cities, they actually welded people into their apartments, saying that they wanted uh, uh, a zero rate on COVID-19. Never happened. And once the people started rising up saying they're going to get rid of Xi Jinping, he had to reverse that. And now what's happening is people are dying, and they are dying all over that country by the millions. And now what we have is a problem with 40 million males in a population of about 1.2 billion that have no women, because for years they kept the women out, or rather they got one child, and then if that one child was a girl, they had that child aborted and they tried to get a boy.
Yeah.
So now you have all these men that are around 25 to 35 years old, no women, and you have a country now turning against the CCP. What do you think's getting ready to happen? And they are plagued with this disease that they never got a hold of in the beginning because they locked people up. China.
Yeah, that's right. And we're seeing the white paper or the blank paper revolution. So
Yes, ma'am.
you're right. Nikki?
Great point, Tony. I mean, I definitely hope that Republicans controlling the House committees, I hope we have some investigations into this. And I hope to see more people like my new Senator J.D. Vance, who are talking about, punishing China for what it did, for sending out a deadly virus throughout the world and putting some financial pressure on them for doing so. But oh boy, quite a few topics we haven't touched. One big one that does need to be discussed is what's happening with the Republican Party leadership and Harmeet Dillon challenging Brown and McDaniel. Where is that going to go? Well, first of all, I think what needs to be discussed is why leadership change is needed, and Harmeet's position about transparency. Where's all the money going? Who are these strategists? And how did they get it so wrong? Why are we still using these same strategists? Those are huge, huge, huge points. Ground game and message building, getting out the vote. Why was Scott Pressler denied? All of those issues need to come up to the forefront, and they need to be dealt with. We need to talk about why the Republican Party keeps telling us they're going to do things for us that they are not doing. And we need to admit that these are issues within our party, and the Democrats are not just a problem. So whether or not Ronna McDaniel wins again, which I happen to think she will, because I think she's bought and paid for her seat pretty much. Those are issues that need to be addressed and come up front. And I do think that because we did not see a great turnout in the midterms. Republicans don't want to admit that. The turnout was huge because our strategies are failing. We need to address that. If we don't address it, then this party is going to be dead, and we're not gonna grow anything. We're not even going to keep the base that we actually have. So that's what I think.
Great points, Donna.
Well, mine is environmental justice. I would say the injustices of environmental justice. So, we talk a lot about how much money Ukraine is getting. What we don't realize is that just in the Inflation Reduction Act, there was $60 billion for environmental justice. Do you think any of that money is going to go to help Black communities? No. It was passed in the name of African American communities, but they will never see that. Just to give you a understanding of how much that means, $60 billion is the market capitalization of Ford Motor Company worldwide. You know how many jobs that can create for African Americans? You know how much that can improve the lives. If you look at the inflated value of Black Wall Street, the 1922 Black Wall Street, we could create 2,000 of those. 2,000. And that was just in one bill. The EPA created a new environmental justice office that'll be in 20 regions around the country. There are going to be billions. That was just one act. There's going to be billions, and there have been hundreds of billions of dollars for environmental justice that will go to white elite climate change activists that will never see the streets of a Black community. Billions, hundreds of billions. Nobody's paying attention to it. It's not being given to HBCUs. It's not being given to any organizations in African American communities. It will nothing but maybe replace a few windows. None of that money will see Black communities. And that's all being done in our name, where we have no control over it, and it's being given to elite environmental law firms that are not Black.
Craig?
I'm going to go back to the story that we started off with, and that is the government-sponsored and paid-for censorship of political enemies. We know what's going on with Twitter because that information has been released to the public. We know it happened in Facebook because Mark Zuckerberg, when he was interviewed by Joe Rogan, said that they were in communication with the FBI. We know that it happened with Google because we know the folks who run Google. The point that I am making here is that it has affected the town square. The internet is now the official town square, whether it's the searches that you do on Google, whether it's your social media, whether it's the videos that are on YouTube, which by the way is owned by Google, which by the way is the largest search engine out there with the exception of Google. They have been successful in doing a bunch of different things. It impacted the 2018 election where Democrats took control of Congress. It impacted the 2020 election where they basically took the election from Donald Trump by subverting and keeping down information that we knew to be true. It impacted the 2022 election.
Yes.
It impacted COVID, where people who were medical experts, right?
Yep.
These are people from institutions that are renowned, that they were experts in their field, but they were silenced by the government through social media and through the tech companies. And when it came to therapeutics, when it came to the efficacy of vaccines, and hundreds of thousands, I feel very comfortable saying, lost their lives as a result of this censorship. Folks, if we do not get a hold of this, we won't get a hold of elections. We won't get a hold of disinformation out there. We have got to get a hold of the idea that the state has worked with technology companies to violate the first of our Bill of Rights, arguably the most important, and that is the right to freedom of speech. And once we lose that, all of the other rights will soon follow.
And on that note,
so true.
we need to wrap up this roundtable. I have to thank our guests. Our guests today have been Colonel Anthony Saab. We've had Dr. Nicole Johnson. We've had Donna Jackson and Craig DeLuz, who some may remember was our very first guest on African American conservatives and gave us the whole idea to turn it into a podcast. So got to give Craig some props.
That's great. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you all for being our guests today on African American Conservatives, the soul of the conservative movement.
Happy New Year.
Yay.
Happy New Year.
Thanks for having me.
That was an amazing roundtable with some great voices. Be sure to tune in to acons.substack.com and also anchor.fm/AACONS or brightnews.com. Until next time, this is Marie with African American Conservatives, the soul of the conservative movement, bidding you goodbye. And also for DK also, who was not on screen today, but he was here. So we wish you a very happy new year.